Right. But I think that the part of that that's really interesting, or one part of it that's really interesting that I want to point out is that there is a communication aspect to it too, in terms of people coming to understand each other, hear each other, and dialogue, which I keep hearing from people I'm talking with through 180 degrees of impact and otherwise, that dialogue is so important to have. And just thinking about the focus of 180 degrees of impact, which is more around social change and social entrepreneurship, I think that lesson, or that piece of advice and wisdom you share, is something that's really applicable, because I've spoken with and met social entrepreneurs that are doing work that is in a context, whether that's in the US or in a different country or otherwise, where they're going against something that is resisting them for some reason. And their view of what is best is not, doesn't always align with what others have in mind. Just to kind of shift the conversation more to social entrepreneurship, I'm not familiar with what your relationship is with the term, because you are a scholar and many other things. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what advice you have for social entrepreneurs, just because I do think your work relates in a lot of ways to the work that people who are trying to make change do. So is there any particular advice that you have?
Well, it's kind of a difficult, it's a very important question.
Right.
The advice, but it basically comes from their worldview. So those people who are extremely conservative have a worldview that they like things not to change. They want the status quo. Mm-hmm. And then those who are more into social causes and so forth, they have the view that everyone has a right to better themselves, to have better situation, so that it's not the rich and the poor, but there's some place in the middle for most people. And what's happening today is that we're getting more separated between the rich and the poor. So those people who are social entrepreneurs, God bless them, they're working against the tide by trying to help people who are on the lower level of economic possibilities to be able to rise out from where they are, because you cannot have intellectual ideas when you're hungry. I mean, or your gangs are running your neighborhood, or your healthcare system is so bad. I mean, there's no way. So it depends. I mean, it's almost like you could say the difference between, say, President Trump and Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's like somewhere in between there, that what he's talking about on progressivism is to help each individual person rise from where they are and be able to have a chance to be better, and so forth and so on. And the other is the wealthy class who, have been inherited their wealth. They didn't really need to work for it, and they want to maintain things the way they are because they like being wealthy and they don't necessarily want to share. But there's so many ways in America through the nonprofit organizations and so forth and so on, and who offer help. And for instance, just this terrible hurricane that's happening in North Carolina. I mean, the people are coming together and helping their neighbors and so forth and so on. So we do it at times of crisis, but it's not a sustainable thing that we do on a daily, basis or over a whole lifetime of people. And it's almost like a crisis has to come, and then people show their true nature, which is to help one another and love one another and give to one another and share and so forth. But when that time is past, then everybody kind of goes back into their own homes and closes the door and forgets, these issues and problems. So social entrepreneurs then have to work harder to try to awaken a conscience within people who are halfway there anyway, or within those who are completely out and have no conscience about the rest of the world, and they're only thinking about their own center of interest and that kind of thing.
Right. And I think that's a beautiful piece of advice. And I also wasn't really thinking about that because I think when I have conversations with social entrepreneurs, the interesting thing for me is that, you know, they're so focused on the work that they're doing, and a lot of it is tiring. To your point, there are people who are hungry. There are people who are dying. And depending on the issue, you could point to a lot of statistics around, for instance, homelessness. I recently spoke with someone who's working and dealing with homelessness and supporting people who are experiencing homelessness, I'll say. And so that takes all of her energy. And I think a lot of the people who are social entrepreneurs, from what I'm understanding, dedicate their energy to the people who are supporting them rather than worrying about those who are not supporting them or who are, you know, pushing back against whatever change they're looking to see and to produce in the world. So I think it's
because you can't do the both at the same time.
No.
You can't devote yourself to, for instance, the homeless at the same time as you're worried about why the wealthy aren't helping. I mean, you can't do it. You have to just put all your energy and love and affection into that social cause that's important for you, and then you know, do whatever you as an individual can do. And that's basically all that we could do. I mean, of course we can as a society do more, and as a group and as a community do more, but at least each individual should try to do more that they can do.
Mm-hmm. Right. Speaking of the work that individuals are doing, thinking about your work and life, I'll say over the last 80 years, as you said, what is that impact that you ultimately want to achieve, other than just standing in the truth and really being a champion of the truth? Is there another impact that you have in mind that you'd like to achieve with your life's work?
I don't know if I could achieve it in whatever time I have left. I'm not sure. But climate change is an extremely important issue that people are not addressing. They go and build again in the same areas, and again, you know, 5-6 years later it comes again. And I mean, you know, all the hurricanes and the typhoons and so many things that are happening, when you read about it, the coral reefs are dying. I mean, you know, so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what about my great-grandchildren? Will they ever be able to survive? How will they be living? What will they be doing, you know, as the planet heats up because of what we're doing with fossil fuels and things? And or we're not looking at it in the same way, although there's so many people talking about it, but and trying to make a change, but it's a very slow kind of process. And it's not really in my area of expertise to be able to do anything about it. And as I say, I mean, you don't know. You have to do just what you can do. And that's not really something I can help with at this point. Mm-hmm. But certainly support them in any way I can. But I think that's the most important. The whole, as they say, the wars are going to be, you know, in 50 years are going to be over water.
Right.
You know, who's putting up the dam? And like India and Pakistan, they share the same water. Mm-hmm. And then if someone builds a dam on one side and the other doesn't give the water to the other side, I mean, you know, it's terrible. We've just ruined the earth. We've corrupted the earth, as the Quranic term goes. And I don't know if we have time to fix it or not, but certainly that we should try. I mean, that's what we need to do. We don't need to sit back and lessen the coal laws, or lessen the amount of methane gas that can go in the air. Or, I mean, that's just putting your head in the sand like the ostrich does. I mean, it's not, you know, facing the reality of what we've done. And some of it, of course, is nature itself. I mean, there's no question that nature itself changes. Nature is always changing. It's incessantly changing. Even our bodies change every, you know, instant. and our souls and our spirit, everything keeps changing in nature. So some of it is nature just changing, but by what we're doing, we're more rapidly